Hey everyone, Faisal for all things mobile, and today I've kind of got a little bit of a blast from the past or retro review for you guys today, and that's of the BlackBerry PlayBook tablet. Now this tablet it was an interesting saga, both for research in motion and the consumers, and let's talk about it. So today, April 19th, marks officially the third year of the PlayBook being available to consumers in the public. And it's hard to believe because in a world of technology, 3 years is basically an eternity. So the fact that this is still running after 3 years is it's an accomplishment to say the least. So let's quickly go over the hardware of the PlayBook just to give everyone a little bit of a fresh refresh, I guess. So we had the 7-inch screen. It was at 1024 by 600, which gave a resolution or pixel density of 169, 170 pixels per inch. We had the 3 megapixel HD full 1080p camera, no flash, no autofocus, and the same with the back here. We had the 5 megapixel full HD, no flash, no autofocus camera, and we had the nice soft touch, and look, it looks really new. So it's very soft touch. You got the BlackBerry logo there. On the bottom, we had the capacity. We also had the micro HDMI slot, which was a nice addition, micro USB slot, and the proprietary, it looks like a MagSafe charger basically. It's a magnetic charger for the rapid charger. All your fun FCC stuff and whatnot. And we had the speakers. We had really nice speakers on this device actually, and they were front facing too. And when I go on a device like the iPad, I really miss having these front-facing speakers because they really are effective. I don't know why more tablet manufacturers haven't done this yet, but it just seems kind of like a brilliant idea to have the speakers on the front, and they're in full stereo as well. On the top, we had dual microphones. We had stereo microphones, as well as a 3.5mm headset jack, plus the 3 buttons: the power on, volume up, and volume down, and those work just as fine. And so yeah, that was the hardware, and this is back in 2011 it was released, but the hardware was basically finalized in the fall of 2010. So this is all 2010 hardware. The processor itself was a TI OMAP 4430 on the Wi-Fi only model, and a TI OMAP 4460 on the LTE and 3G plus models. The software, it ran what was called Tablet OS, and then they rebranded it to the PlayBook OS at some point. And this is kind of what really was the downfall of the PlayBook, unfortunately. It was the software. Now, the hardware that the PlayBook ran on, at the time, it was excellent. It was actually cutting edge. And Quantum Computer, the company behind building the PlayBook, along with RIM, they had made a really good device for what it was at that point. But the software couldn't catch up. So for instance, if I go into like the calendar, right, which is one of the PIM apps that came in PlayBook OS 2.0, this itself was actually not there in the beginning. So we were missing applications like messaging, or messages, contacts, calendar, and a couple others in the beginning. And they just weren't there. And the only way you were able to get those apps was to either use the web version, so go into hotmail.com through the browser, or use a BlackBerry device, and you'd have BlackBerry Bridge, and bridged through Bluetooth, a secure Bluetooth connection, you'd be able to get access to all that. But again, not everyone had a BlackBerry smartphone. Some people wanted this tablet for other reasons, and they weren't BlackBerry smartphone users, so they couldn't really have the full benefits of the BlackBerry PlayBook. So that was kind of the downfall. The other nice thing, on the positives, it ran Flash, and it actually had a really good browser. And the browser itself right now, it's a little dated, yes, I know, but it does still run Flash. It runs JavaScript pretty well, and it loads pretty fast. The loading bar is, it's gone now, but loads pretty well, and zooms in, zooms out quite nicely. So it's still a decent browser for what it does. It's not going to be the world's best browser, but I mean, it gets the job done basically. The multitasking was really the best part of the PlayBook. So for example, I've got that running in the background, and you guys can see that the loading bar is going. I can be in another app. you had the gestures for the peak. So basically on BlackBerry 10, the swipe up gesture to get you to look at your notifications, that is called peak, and this is where it originated from. This idea on the playbook of having the peak. You can swipe through apps, and you can swipe up to see all your running apps. You can swipe up again to close them. Very WebOS like. So that part of the playbook was great. People really like the multitasking and just being able to run, for example, a YouTube video in the background and not have to close it out and not worry about it pausing. The other thing that was nice about the playbook was that at the time it ran, and it still does, an Android Gingerbread 2.3.3 runtime. Now, the runtime hasn't been updated, so it's still running the Android 2.3.3 runtime, which is quite slow, and it's not as great as the BlackBerry 10 devices. The BlackBerry 10 devices, their Android runtime capabilities far exceed that of the playbook. And yeah, they're running 4.2.2, and they're going to be upgraded to 4.3 actually in BlackBerry 10.3. So they're moving quite quickly, and the Android experience on the playbook worked for certain apps. For example, Tap Talk, it worked really well for that. But now apps are getting updated. I tried the latest Twitter app the other day. It refused to open on the playbook. So a lot of apps have been updated to work with the later versions of Android, and the runtime hasn't been updated. So that's kind of a downside of this device. The runtime was never updated. But the one thing I do really like, and I still use it for, is actually ebook reading. So I've got the Kobo app here, and we're loading up the Kobo app, and the size of this tablet itself, visit your library. And the size of the tablet itself lends itself to ebook reading. I don't want to sign in yet. And you can basically just read ebooks. The bezels were a little thick, but that was because to accommodate the touch, the gesture area. And I mean, yeah, this is the playbook. Honestly, since the last update, the 2.0 update back in February 21st of 2012, it hasn't really changed much. It had a little bit of a different UI back in 2011 when it launched, but they added the Android runtime, they added the 3 PIM apps and Print to Go, which is somewhere here. But really, it hasn't really changed much. So all the native apps have been basically the same. So you can check like the wallpapers through here. You can open one of them up, swipe, and all the stuff is basically the same. I mean, and it runs well for the software it's running, but the problem was, I think that it was a lost opportunity, and it's basically a test bed for BlackBerry 10, because this device was the first QNX device that came out of BlackBerry, and they were kind of using it to test out how their next generation smartphone operating system would be. But unfortunately, BlackBerry did decide to kind of officially put this on EOL in April of this year. So actually this month they did. And also BlackBerry News was another app, and BlackBerry OS 5.0 and OS 6.0 have been on EOL. So only BlackBerry 7 and BlackBerry 10 remain. And in that time, there was a lot of accessories that came out for it. So this was the pouch that everyone kind of got with the playbook. It came in the pouch. And this is the BlackBerry OEM convertible shell, which basically takes your playbook, puts it in here, has the plastic covering the buttons, leaves the camera exposed, and it gave you basically 2 angles to position your playbook. Also, a soft shell came, which I've got somewhere, and that was just basically this portion, and it covered the buttons as well, and it left room for the microphones and the headset jack. And there was also an OEM keyboard, so there was a Bluetooth keyboard that was made by BlackBerry, and it had a trackpad too, so that was kind of neat. But really, what ultimately killed the playbook wasn't that the hardware wasn't up to par. I mean, now obviously the hardware is very dated, and you're not going to really find this hardware in the market at all. It was really the software, and I think that if RIM had stepped up to the plate and had done better on the software offerings, that we'd probably have the playbook still around, or even we might have a playbook 2. So I don't know. Faisal Ali. This was the retro review of the BlackBerry PlayBook. I'll see you guys in the next video.